So I'm really pleased that he's here with us today, partly because he's going to help us tell us a little bit about his background, but also the first time he ran for office was in 1984, which is when he was elected to Congress. His most recent election was against Senator Kristen Gillibrand in 2010.
For the U.S. Senate.
For the U.S. Senate.
Much different race, whole state.
That's right. So, so one of the things that he'll be able to shed light on for us is the evolution of political campaigns over, almost 3 decades. To talk about from the perspective of a candidate, how that process has changed, how the legislative process interacts with campaigns once you're elected, etc. And I think that his insights will be very, very helpful. I'm really delighted that he'll be here. Some of you, if you're not familiar with Representative DioGuardi, you may be familiar with his daughter, Cara DioGuardi, who, for those of you who are American Idol fans, was a former judge.
Found it come up, so you might as well get it out the way now.
Exactly. So I just thought some of you may be interested in knowing that. So I'm really delighted you were able to join us and to share some of your insights with us. And the floor is yours.
Thank you, Council. So I'm not going to tell you, what you should do, but I'm just telling you what worked for me. Because nobody thought I had any chance of being elected to the U.S. Congress. Let me tell you how I did it, and let me get into the key elements of the campaigns. Okay? From what's in my head. What's the number one thing? You just said it. Anybody want to volunteer a guess? What would be the number one most important element in any campaign? The candidate. All right? The candidate. Who is the candidate? Is it someone who's accomplished? What's accomplishment? Someone who's accomplished something with their lives. Someone who could say, I'm a model for others. Family enters into that too, as you can see in this election. But at least in the private sector, kick them out of it. People want to know, how did you perform? Performance is very important. When you leave the school and get your first job, what's the first thing they're going to look at? Your marks. They have nothing else to go by, except an interview, but they want to know. How did this person perform over 4 years in a variety of classes, variety of subjects, variety of professors? So that you can't game the system. You have a favorite professor or you got people look at the totality. So you got to look at the candidate. Is this someone that I believe would motivate people to vote for him or her? Now, then you got to look at some personal characteristics. Does this candidate in some way represent the constituency of that area that he or she is running for election? What do I mean? Well, you might run for town council in Pleasant. Many of my friends do that. And that's, a much smaller constituency. But you might run for county. And Rob Aston was not a county executive. He was, many years ago when I was a congressman, the town councilman from Mount Pleasant. You might decide, well, no, I'd like to think big, and I think I'm going to take a shot at Congress. The districts are changing. I'm in one of those districts now that's going to be open. I believe that I've got, something to sell, me first, and then what I believe in, and there's a constituency there that I can reach. That is, congressional district. Or you might decide what I did last year, almost like Don Quixote, running for the U.S. Senate in this tough state as a fiscal conservative. Not that I'm not independent on many things, but I am a staunch fiscal conservative. Why am I proud to say I'm a conservative? Because I believe in limited government. I believe in government close to the people, the neighborhoods, the villages, the cities, the states, and only then the federal government. And I think our future's in danger because there's a philosophy of government that is currently in place, which is making the federal government the paymaster for too many programs. And many of these things, I think the states can do better, where they're closer to the people. And this is going to be one of the things that you're going to have to, as young adults and as you mature, you're going to be part of that decision. What kind of country are we going to be? Are we going to be a country that is top-down, or we're going to be a country that's bottom-up. Truth in government. That's my foundation. It used to be called the Common Sense Educational Fund. That's still a corporation. But I set up an AKA, also known as Truth in Government, because I felt that best expressed the thing that motivated me most then and now. And that's to tell the truth about the numbers. You are being seduced by the wrong numbers. The national debt. That's why I'm going to leave you a copy of my book, Unaccountable Commas. It doesn't add up. Look what I wrote. This is the second version. The first version was 1992. I took out my voting card. Did you know that Congresswoman vote with a plastic card? How many of you know that? Well, it's at the end of a row of seats. You put it in. And when I was in Congress, I figured out in my mind that that is the most expensive credit card in the world. Because every time we were putting it in it, even under President Reagan, one year he had a $200 billion deficit. That's why they had something, you may remember this process, called Ram Running, to try to get that deficit down over 4 years, 25%, so that we could get into an even or a surplus. Couldn't do it. They tried 5 and 7, and they gave up on it. And that was back in 1986. They gave up on it in the early 90s. We're still giving up on it. The president had a commission. A great Democrat, Erskine Bowles. A great Republican, Alan Simpson. Mainly independent thinkers, not the far right and the far left. Accomplished people, even today when they left Congress. They came up with a formula. The debt commission formula. Why wasn't that made mandatory like the military base closing commission when I was a congressman? Because they played politics. And that's what's going on today. Whether you're Republican or Democrat, we are playing too much politics with the numbers, so that if you read this book, and I put a new introduction on it, most of it is what I had in 1992, but in 2010, knowing that I was going to run, I updated it. In 1992, the cover was a plastic card. I made it gold, and I called it the Congressional Credit Card. And on it, I said, credit line unlimited, expiration date never. Why? Because they keep raising the debt ceiling. And then bill to future generations. On this one, I made it into the national debt card, and I put it on the backs of the young people. You can tell they're young. One has a ponytail, and they're thin. All right? And this is not St. Petersburg. That's the capital of the United States of America. That's what I see. And I made it apocalyptic because I'm trying to wake up America. I'm going to be 72 this year, and I'm still going around speaking to community groups. I'll be at Wharton School next Tuesday, giving a speech. Not this exactly, but giving something more in tune with the messages or the issues, because I wanted to make young people in particular. That's why I was very happy Pastor Tim told me, because it's important for them to see themselves as part of a system they can change. Everything can be changed, but you can't change it by wishing it or dreaming it, and you can't do it alone. So you need to find like people to do things like that. So let's get back to the candidate. So when I did what I did, why did I succeed as a candidate? Well, you know, Westchester County, the part that I wanted, and why people thought I had no chance of winning, because they were looking at the surface. They were not looking at the bottom. And I'll tell you how to get to the bottom. You should need professionals that do polls and things like that. Big part of it, too. But if you looked at the surface of the southern part of Westchester County, from Chappaqua, Portchester, on the Long Island Sound, Chappaqua, Newcastle, in the middle, where Flint is today, that was part of my district. And then on the Hudson, Ossining, where I live today. In those days, I was in New Rochelle. And down to the Bronx. It didn't include any part of the Bronx, but it included everything above the Bronx. So you had Mount Vernon, you had New Rochelle, and you had Yonkers. Big Democrat registration. So my district had over 3 times more registered Democrat than Republican. So how do you win a district like that? They never had a Republican. They got him. A billionaire, Georgia Pacific. He was a congressman for 14 years. I announced against him. I got lucky. 6 months into the race, he decided he had enough. Now, I'd like to think that maybe he saw me coming and he didn't have my energy. He did look a little rumpled to me. I thought he was vulnerable, but I didn't think I was going to have an open seat. But by the time I left my firm, April 1 of 1984, the seat was open, and guess what? I'm facing 7 Republicans and 3 conservatives. We have a conservative party in the state. We have these little parties, you know, they add up the votes. New York is unusual in that. So I had to take on because our primary is in September. At least it was until recently. They may now switch it to June. We still don't have districts. I'm not going to do that. But the point is, here I am now in April. I'm looking at September. And I'm saying, how am I going to become the candidate? It's like I'm going to now fight my way into this thing, spend a lot of energy and money. Now, what did I do? This is what you learn from the private sector. How did I get to the point that I could find a level playing field for me in such a difficult position? You need a strategy, you need a message that resonates with people, and you need good consultants. Good consultants. I would never get into a race like that unless I first researched who were the best. I wanted to know the best pollster. I wanted to know the best strategist and the best media person. Let's start with media. You know who Roger Ailes is, right? President of Fox. Believe it or not, I hired him for 4 years. He was my video media. He was, in those days, he was a political consultant. And he almost didn't take me. Because when he asked me questions, I was holding on the video. He says, Joe, I like what you're saying, but you know what? Look at the video when I answered that question on the budget. Perfect. You're looking right into the camera. You're not flinching. You're not moving. But when I started asking you questions on gay rights, abortion, and whatnot, the answer was perfect. But look at you. You're moving around. The press is going to see that. They're going to see that that's the issue that you're nervous on. I'm a CPA, so obviously I would be a lot more nervous about the social issues than I would about fiscal issues. All right? But I do have my beliefs. But believing something and having other people know that you believe it and you're sincere may not be easy to do. Especially when they tell you. The TV tells all. The eyes see trillions of bits of information almost immediately and form judgments even before the brain forms an image. And that's the title of Roger Ailes' book that he wrote in 1989. You are the message. Marshall McLuhan said, the medium is the message. Roger Ailes said, no, you are the message. As soon as you walk into a room, people will immediately, because of the eyes being the most powerful of all the senses, pick up things about you. And it's tough to overrun those things later on. So, you know, the first thing you learn from people like Ailes is you better look relaxed. You better have a smile. And make people comfortable, that you're comfortable with yourself. That when you're talking, you believe in all these things. So you need consultants. I had to go. Why did Roger Ailes say to me, Joe, you know, I want to lose this race. And I'm not sure. I know it's going to be tough. I'm not saying I'm not in for a tough race. But I know who you are now. You are a high-powered salesman. You brought in a lot of business to Arthur Ailes. You made a lot of money. But you know what? Politics is different. People don't want to know how great you are. They have to know who you are. They have to know you're qualified. But they don't want to know how great you are. Really. They want to think that they're important. They're the center. It's the vote that you want. And you can't sell people on who you are. You've got to buy their vote. And the way you buy their vote is you listen to them. You make them feel like they're important. So I had to switch my whole mentality from selling in order to get business into the firm, in order to have a better bottom line, so I could then make money, to something much more passive, in a sense. That, you know, you have to look at me as someone you can trust. So, you need professionals, right? And professionals are very important because there is a science to getting elected. The subjective side is the candidate. The scientific side is the polling, the strategy, the message. How do you combine those things into a winning formula, because you're never going to convince all the people. You know, you need 51%. Or you need just over 50 to get elected in a district. But I managed to do it because I noticed the ethics side of it, and no matter where I went on my campaigns, I had my immigrant parents hold on. And in their own way, they were very articulate, and they sent over a good message, and that helped me a lot. So the candidate has got to be someone who's accomplished, who really wants to do it. If you're not motivated to run, it's going to show. And you have the energy. You know, in my race for the U.S. Senate, they were outside my door picking me up, sometimes supposed to leave even more. I wanted to reduce the number of planes as much as possible. It's a pretty big state. Now, a couple of times I had to fly to Buffalo. But many times what I would do is I'd make Buffalo the last stop with the car or bus. They get a bus, we put a nice wrap around it, with my picture, my name, and as we go through Albany and then Syracuse, Rochester, we get up and then come back. But if you had to get to Buffalo, not easy to do, just drive, so you have to jump some point. But the point is that you need to get around the state. You need to appeal to those constituents, and the polling tells you who they are and how they feel in these various areas. And basically, you get that, but you need the energy to do it as well. So you've got to keep yourself in good shape. I can tell you, physically, if you're going to run for something, you've got to be prepared to get up early. And look at them today. Look at these primaries going on. How intensive it is. You can imagine a guy like Romney, you know, having to get up early and keep going on the speeches. So, the candidate, the consultants, the pollster, the media person, the strategist. Strategy is very important. You know, when you give speeches on what, you know, what is the message that will resonate the most. And then the issue of message. That also comes from the poll. What are the people most interested in that particular area? As I said, you have to know what your constituency is. My first election was president of my homeowners association in Rochelle. I knew what that constituency was. 131 homes. They wanted a clean neighborhood. They didn't like the way New Rochelle was putting up the signs. They liked my vision. I had to compete with others. That we were going to take down those signs, even though New Rochelle said, we have no money. We can't afford anything. We'll do it. We're going to raise it in these next years. I convinced them that rather than wait for New Rochelle to do it, don't we want to live day to day a quality of life in our neighborhoods? This is our most important asset, our home, our kids are here. We get a pond, like a village green. This was the first planned development in Westchester County, called Wilmot Woods. And what I was looking at when I bought that house was not a pond, but a little muddy area where it would rain, there'd be a rivulet running through, and someone, an older person, who was one of the original owners, sent me the original brochure. I could see this gorgeous white bridge over this pond. I sent it out as a season's greeting card to all the neighbors. This is your neighborhood. This is what it looked like in 1936, probably through the 40s. Would you like to see it the way it was? I would like to see it too. And I'd like to make it happen. Believe it or not, we started to contribute money to our private fund for the association. I convinced the city then to do some things. For instance, I brought in an excavator to get the pond back. But what do you do with the stuff? Very tough. You know, it's a town thing. But the engineer in the town said, right, if you do that, we'll take that stuff and we'll put it someplace. This is the way I think government should work. Just like that little neighborhood association, where, you know, we shouldn't be waiting for the government to do everything. Because the government can't afford to do everything. So what do we want to do? What kind of a partnership can we make with that government? I think that's the kind of elected official you should be. That's the kind of elected official I was. I always like these public-private partnerships. Today, you're going to need them more than ever with the infrastructure. Look at that Tallahassee Bridge. We still don't know where the money's going. The bridge literally should cost $15 billion, but now, because they're afraid it's going to fall down, they're not going to put in right away the transportation hub. And we know that the bridge right now is obsolete. 150,000 cars and trucks a year. So what's the answer? The answer is to get those cars and trucks off the road. How do you do that? Mass transportation. You should have a monorail. You should have a bus. You should have a train. They're not doing it. Now it's a $5 billion bridge. So I went, I'm a citizen. I went before the group, and I said, no, I'm going to work against that. This is not what we need. That was maybe 15 years ago if you wanted to replace it. Now, it's going to be obsolete the day you build it. Oh, but we're going to leave it so that we can add to it later. It never happens. Once it's up, they will do it. You're going to force the issue when they're doing it. So, okay. Those are the elements. Now, well, don't forget, the last thing you should remember, I should tell you, is that after you have a good candidate and you have a good bunch of consultants, so that you have whole and issue a good strategy, and you have your message, what's the other most important thing? Funding. You have to finance that campaign. It's like a business. You got to pay. If you want to work for a candidate, you got to get paid. Now, you might want to volunteer, and that would be great. You know, you can volunteer. But at some point, you leave here. You might decide that I want to make a living. So someone has to raise money to pay a staff. They have to raise money to pay the person, the media person, the strategist. And you have to raise money fast, because most of the money is spent towards the end of the campaign.